Chapter 930. Ah. What are you doing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunqian was suddenly stunned. She looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts. Although she vaguely guessed something in her heart, all she could do at this time was to play dumb. I have to let your dad and mom know who you left with. If you can't find him, I have to let them know who to call the police to arrest, right? Listening to Feng Yunqian's words, Jiang Hai also smiled and then said to her, "You are going to murder for money." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunqian couldn't help but pat Jiang Hai with her other hand, and said with some reproach, but looking at her raised mouth, it is not difficult to see that she really likes Jiang Hai's proposal. There are some words that she can't say. After all, before Jiang Hai she was not like Ai Xiaoxi and Qili. Before she fell in love with Jiang Hai she just regarded Jiang Hai as a road. If there is one, then there is one. If there is none, then forget it. But after she lived with Jiang Hai for a long time, there is a good saying, love grows with time. Maybe it is because of the long time before Jiang Hai feelings will develop. So Feng Yunqian's feelings for Jiang Hai are also slowly changing. She is not willing to leave Jiang Hai, whether it is because of him or because of his money, his home, his beef, or even she can accept other people for Jiang Hai. She may also be the one who accepted it the most calmly among these people. Qi Li, Qi Jie, Qia, and Ai Xiaoxi all went through a psychological struggle, but she accepted it the fastest because she knew that she was not qualified to choose. So when Jiang Hai met Ai Xiaoxi's parents, Feng Yunqian actually had this idea. But she had no way to mention it. Now that Jiang Hai mentioned it, it would be nonsense to say that she was not touched, so after slapping Jiang Hai she took the initiative to wrap her arms around Jiang Hai's waist, and buried her head in Jiang Hai's arms and turned hard. "Is what you said true?" After a while she raised her head, looked at Jiang Hai and asked seriously. "Of course, go back and tell uncle and auntie that I will come over on the 3rd day of the new year." Touching Feng Yunqian's hair, Jiang Hai chuckled and said to her. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunqian also bit her lips, then she nodded hard. "Feng Yunqian?" Just as the two of them were done being intimate and were about to walk forward, a voice that was 3 parts surprised, 3 parts emotional, and 4 parts angry came from the front. Jiang Hai and Feng Yunqian looked toward the source of the voice and saw a person who was almost as tall as Jiang Hai. At this time he was standing there holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand, looking at them in a daze. "Tianqiu?" Looking at this person, Jiang Hai could not help but raise his eyebrows. He also knew this person. Jiang Hai and Feng Yunqian's junior high school classmate. Jiang Hai remembered that the day he and Feng Yunqian reunited was the day of their classmates' reunion. At that time he was also there. At the table he was very attentive to Feng Yunqian, but in the end Feng Yunqian left with him. After that Jiang Hai did not see him again. But now what kind of person is he, Tianqiu? Why are you here? Looking at the person in front of her, Feng Yunqian asked with some doubt. She didn't know why he was here because she hadn't seen him since that time she saw him. This guy is married, do you know that?" Looking at the almost same reaction of the two people in front of him, Tianqiu walked in front of the two of them in a few steps, pointed at Jiang Hai with a trembling finger, and said to Feng Yunqian in a deep voice. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai's brows couldn't help but frown. Jiang Hai could hear the anger in his words, but this is F** King Bulsh** T. "I know, I have always been a mistress, don't you know?" Hearing Tianqiu's words, Feng Yunqian took the initiative to stand in front of Jiang Hai and said to Tianqiu with an unhappy face. Hearing her words, Tianqiu could not help but choke. "Yunqian, you know I don't mean that." Hearing Feng Yunqian's words, Tianqiu said anxiously. "I don't care if you mean that or not, I mean that. What are you doing here?" Feng Yunqian waved her hand. She didn't have a good impression of Tianqiu. This was the case a long time ago. Otherwise, with Tianqiu's capital, if she was really interested in him, the two of them would have been together long ago, and Jiang Hai wouldn't have taken advantage of it. I heard from uncle and auntie that you are coming back today, so I have been waiting for you. I am divorced, so." Hearing Feng Yunqian's words, Tianqiu said with a hesitant face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai raised his eyebrows. "CK, this guy is looking for death, right? You are divorced and you dare to come and steal my woman? Does he not want to live anymore?" Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but take a step forward, but he was blocked by Feng Yunqian. "Whether you are divorced or not has nothing to do with me. I can only express my pity for you. What you have to do now is to find a person who loves you because I have found my own happiness." Feng Yunqian knew that Tianqiu's family was an official. Although the official position was not high, it was in the public security department. His father was a captain. Jiang Hai's power was in the United States. In the United States, not to mention a captain, even a bureau chief had to take the initiative to bow to Jiang Hai. But in China the situation was not good. So in her opinion, Jiang Hai had better not have any conflict with him. If there was anything she would settle it for Jiang Hai. Your happiness? Your happiness is this guy? Pointing at Jiang Hai, Tianqiu had looked down on Jiang Hai since he was in school. Of course, not only Jiang Hai, he also looked down on most people. Because Jiang Hai was very ordinary, his academic results were not good, his height was not high, and his family was not rich. There were more than 40 students in the class, Jiang Hai was in the 30s every time. Basically, passing was the best result. His studies were not good and his family was not good, so in Tianqiu's opinion, he was a person who had no future. Including Jiang Hai, Fu Yuan, Xiang Hua, and the others, he pinched half of his eyes and looked down on these people. However, he was slapped in the face by Jiang Hai twice in a row in love, and he couldn't stand it. He couldn't afford to offend the one Feng Yunshan found before, but it didn't mean that he couldn't afford to offend Jiang Hai. Looking at Jiang Hai, his eyes were burning with anger. Looking at his appearance, Jiang Hai smiled disdainfully. Then he gently hugged Feng Yunshan's waist, turned her head and gently kissed her lips. Seeing this scene, Tianqiu was stunned, and Feng Yunshan was also a little surprised. She's willing. What can you do? She's also willing to eat rice and vegetables with me. What can you do? Looking at Tianqiu's eyes that were about to pop out, Jiang Hai said disdainfully. Although Jiang Hai's power was not in the country, don't forget that Jiang Hai was now a major shareholder of the Qi Group, and if it was based on shares, he was the first shareholder. This guy's father was just a small captain of the Public Security Bureau. He couldn't even fight with a third-rate businessman, let alone Tianqiu. Whether or not he was using the tiger's skin, Jiang Hai couldn't deal with a second or third generation of the Red family with the Qi Group, but the general rich second generation or the second generation of a small official like him, Jiang Hai was really confident. You son of a bitch. Seeing that Jiang Hai still dared to provoke him like this, Tianqiu was about to go crazy. With a roar, he threw away the flowers in his hand and rushed toward Jiang Hai, but how could he compare with Jiang Hai's speed? Seeing him rushing over, Jiang Hai went up and kicked him right in the middle of his mouth. Then Tianqiu was like a rolling gourd flying out upside down. After rolling several times on the ground, he hit the pile of snow next to him and stopped, but his face was covered in dust. Because it was winter, he was wearing thick clothes, so although the strength of this kick was not small at most, it left a purple mark on his mouth. But it was enough to make him temporarily lose his combat power. You dare to hit me. Covering his mouth and feeling the sharp pain there, Tianqiu pointed at Jiang Hai and said with a horrified face. It seemed that Jiang Hai was about the same height as him, but he couldn't understand how Jiang Hai had so much strength. So what if I hit you? If you dare to be cocky again, I will destroy your family. When picking an opponent, it's best to know the other party's situation before you start. My wife is the chairman of the Qi Group, and I am the largest shareholder of the Qi Group. Does the Qi Group know what this means? If you don't, go back and ask your father. If I see you here again, I will let you know why the flowers are so red. Looking at Tianqiu's horrified eyes, Jiang Hai naturally walked over with Feng Yunshan in his arms and said word by word to Tianqiu, who was still lying in the snow. After speaking without waiting for him to react, Jiang Hai left with Feng Yunshan in his arms. Listening to Jiang Hai's powerful words, Feng Yunshan's face was quite red. She leaned in Jiang Hai's arms and slowly walked downstairs. Go up. Looking at the electronic door in front of him, Jiang Hai stroked Feng Yunshan's hair again and said to her with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan also nodded, then took out the key and opened the door. But before going in, she turned back and kissed the corner of Jiang Hai's mouth, then went in with a grin. Listening to Feng Yunshan's footsteps quickly going upstairs, Jiang Hai also touched the corner of his mouth. This feeling is weird. Not long after, Jiang Hai received a WeChat message from Feng Yunshan that she had arrived home. Then he turned and left. When he went back, he found that Tianqiu was gone, but it didn't matter whether he was here or not. Just like what Jiang Hai said, he didn't take Tianqiu seriously. Today he came over and got kicked. If he dared to come again, then it wouldn't be a matter of 1 or 2 kicks. Whistling, Jiang Hai returned to the gate of the community, called another car, and went to his villa in Jiangbei. Chapter 931. Looking at Jiang Hai's back as he left, Feng Yunshan tightened her grip on her phone, then opened the door and walked in. As soon as she walked in, she found her parents sitting in the living room watching TV in the distance. When they saw Feng Yunshan walk in, the two of them looked at her, but their expressions were a little different. Feng Yunshan's mother's eyes were full of worry, while her father's eyes had a trace of anger. Yunshin, you're back. Have you had dinner? You must be tired. Come and sit down and rest. Looking at Feng Yunshin's mother stood up and said to her with a smile on her face, Mom, it's okay. I've had dinner. I'm not tired. Hearing her mother's words, Feng Yunyun shook her head and smiled. Why are you worried about her? Will she still be hungry? What kind of food can't she eat? Hearing what Feng Yunshin said, Feng Yunshin's father said with a straight face. Hearing his words, the originally not very warm feeling in the room dropped below the freezing point, and the smile on Feng Yunshin's face also disappeared. Stop talking. Our daughter only comes back for a few days a year, and you still have to give her a hard time. Feng Yunshin's mother couldn't help but complain as she tugged at Feng Yunshin's father's clothes. Who asked her to come back for 2 days? Who asked her to come back? Did I ask her to come back? Why did she come back? To embarrass me? All of my relatives and friends, who doesn't know that she's a mistress outside? Why did she come back? She came back to anger me to death. However, Feng Yunshin's mother's tugging didn't make Feng Yunshin's father change his mind. Instead, he straightened his neck and shouted. What do you have to say to me? Why are you shouting at my mother? Yes, I went out to be someone's mistress, but don't you think about who it is for? If I didn't go out to be a mistress, who bought this house? Now who are you eating, wearing, and using? If I didn't go out to be someone's mistress, you would have been dead for 7 or 8 years, do you know that? Hearing her father's angry roar, Feng Yunshin didn't choose to swallow her anger. Instead, she also straightened her neck and shouted loudly. How can you say that? I'd rather die than let you do these things. Even if I were to live, I wouldn't be able to straighten my back. Hearing Feng Yunshin's resistance, Feng Yunshin's father also shouted loudly. Feng Yunshin's mother was in the middle, tears were about to come out. Looking at her mother's appearance, Feng Yunshin also took a deep breath. For the sake of her mother, she couldn't argue with her father like that. However, it was inevitable that her heart would ache. This kind of scene happened almost every year. In her opinion, the whole world could criticize her, but only her father couldn't. Forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with you. If you don't like it, then close your eyes. Who told you to look? And this matter was really difficult to explain? Hey, this matter is just like a TV drama. It's really strange. Glancing at Qi Li, Jianghai helplessly let go of her and then sat behind her. His relationship with Qijie and Qia was really strange. Sure enough, it's you, bastard. Well, I'll give you a chance. Speak slowly. Hearing Jianghai admit it, Qi Li turned her head and punched Jianghai's arm. Then she sat there angrily, waiting for Jianghai's explanation. Seeing that she was at least willing to listen to his explanation, Jianghai also smiled bitterly. Then he looked at the sky outside and slowly spoke. I met Qijie and Qia very early. It should be nearly 3 years. At that time they were still called Penny and Little Ya. Looking at the sky outside, Jianghai also sat there and recalled with Qi Li. Chapter 945. The Boca district, or Boca as it was known locally, was the old port and neighborhood of Buenos Aires. The most famous 3 places were Tango Street, Bar and Coffee Street, and Boca Juniors, an Argentinian football club established in 1905. Yes, most people who watched football matches knew about this team. It was a strong team in South America. After Jianghai and the others had eaten, they drove 2 MPVs to the district. As soon as they walked in, the first thing they saw were the colorful houses. To be honest, it was very difficult to see such colorful houses. If they came in the day, they would probably look even better. Luis Cazard also explained to Jianghai the reason why this place had become like this. In the beginning, this area was actually prepared for dock workers and sailors. Most of the workers came from Spain, Italy, and other countries. This could be seen from the European-style houses they built. In the beginning, in order to save money, the ship had to be painted. The paint couldn't be allowed to fall off and expose the metal inside. Otherwise, it would be corroded by the seawater. Therefore, no matter if the ship was used or not, it had to be painted every few months to make it usable. This was especially true in the early 20th century. However, things like paint had to be bought. It was impossible to buy all of it. Therefore, the dockworkers and sailors would bring the leftover paint back home and paint it on their houses and streets. Gradually, the houses here became colorful. There were blue, pink, green, red, yellow, and even other colors. There were all kinds of colors. If it was daytime, the shops here would be open. In front of almost every shop, there would be Boca Juniors cards, or postcards of football stars such as Messi and Maradona, or some football accessories. During the day, there would be many beautifully dressed dancers standing by the side of the street. They wore very simple clothes. These women on the street were not there to solicit customers, but to take photos and dance. For $20 you could touch their thighs and do something very, gentleman. Then you could ask your partner to come over and take photos. Of course, there were some restricted areas and areas that were not allowed to be touched. Recently, the economic situation in Argentina was really bad. In 2012, $1 was equivalent to 4.40 Argentine pesos, but today it was equivalent to 15.50 Argentine pesos. Inflation and currency devaluation caused the economic situation in Argentina to deteriorate day by day. A large number of people lost their jobs and the price of goods increased. Although Argentina was not in dire straits, it was still difficult to live. The gap between the rich and the poor was huge. The average income in Buenos Aires was 20,000 Argentine pesos, which was equivalent to about 9,000 renminbi per month. This was naturally enough for Jiang Hai to spend. Looking at the thing in front of them, the two girls licked their lips. The girl with better English directly lowered her head, while the other one helped to stimulate Jiang Hai's senses. Jiang Hai could be considered to be a veteran. After all, there were only so many women who had a fixed relationship with him. But the two girls in front of him gave him a different kind of stimulation. This time, Jiang Hai only lasted for about 20 minutes before it was over. It's really great. We can use it for a long time. Looking at the flagpole that was still standing after the end of the first contact battle, the two girls said with shining eyes. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai also smiled helplessly. Am I getting more and more perverted? But before he could reflect on himself, the two girls had already pulled him to the side of a large jacuzzi in the distance. The water that had been filled when they came in was already full at this time. After letting Jiang Hai lie in it, the two girls also lay in it, one on the left and one on the right. Chapter 948. Well, it's already this time. Looking at the watch on the bedside in a daze, Jiang Hai patted his head and sat up from the bed. Looking at the two naked girls, one on the left and one on the right, still curled up on the bed, Jiang Hai's big hand couldn't help but gently pat their buttocks. Last night they really had a lot of fun. He had to admit that children had good stamina. It was said that children were like wolves in their 30s and tigers in their 40s. That was because children in their teens in China hadn't started learning yet. In their 20s they would more or less be a little shy. In their 30s they would no longer be shy and their needs would skyrocket. These children here, on the other hand, didn't have any shyness. Although they weren't old enough to do these things, they were very curious. What kind of position, what kind of process they wanted to experience. In addition, Jiang Hai said that they didn't have to worry about her wallet, so last night they played very crazily. In the mouth, in the front, behind, and in the hands they even hugged each other tightly. Jiang Hai took advantage of their indescribable outside body to come out once. It could be said that they had played all kinds of games. Even Jiang Hai's body had fallen asleep, let alone them. So, even though Jiang Hai was patting them now, they didn't show any signs of waking up. Shaking his head, Jiang Hai went to take a shower. After putting down enough dollars, he put on his clothes and left. When he left the room, the surroundings were already very quiet. He took the elevator to the first floor, only to find that it was already empty. Only a few workers were cleaning up there. Jiang Hai didn't care and went straight to the parking lot. When he arrived, he found that Connorson Peters had been waiting here for a long time. Connorson was indeed not that interested in women, but he wasn't a virgin who didn't know anything. So, he also stayed here last night, but he woke up early. When he saw Jiang Hai come out, he also stood up and followed beside Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai saw that the others hadn't come out yet, so he wasn't in a hurry. He first went to a nearby shop to have breakfast. While he was eating, Belle Lester, Louis Cazada, and the others came out one by one. It was said that men had 4 irons. Originally, Jiang Hai thought that Louis Cazada was a very bad guy. Even if he deliberately learned Chinese for him, Jiang Hai was still very unhappy with him. However, at this time his opinion of him had changed a little. After all, they had played together before, so they could be considered buddies. Therefore, Jiang Hai specially treated him to breakfast this morning. As for the wine last night, naturally he paid for it. As for the money that they had to pay, naturally they paid for it separately. This kind of thing was very particular. No matter how good a buddy was, they wouldn't treat each other like this. Because it was summer now, there were no glaciers on the sea level, so naturally there was nothing to see. Therefore, after staying here for a while, Jiang Hai and the others returned to the cabin. Naturally, after returning, they checked their weapons. When it was time for lunch, they went to eat. The distance from Tierra del Fuego to the South Pole was a total of 800 kilometers, and this ship was relatively fast. It could travel at 20 knots per hour, which was almost 37 kilometers per hour. In other words, if they maintained this speed, it would take them 22 hours to reach the South Pole. What's more, the closer the ship was to the South Pole, the slower it would be because there would be some floating ice or shallow reefs on the seafloor. Therefore, according to Luis Quezada, it would take them more than a day to reach the South Pole. Jiang Hai and the others did not mind. After eating lunch and dinner on the ship, Jiang Hai and the others returned to their rooms to sleep. However, early the next morning, Jiang Hai felt a biting cold wind blowing on him. When he opened his eyes, he found that Azalina, Galena, and Wallace Shelley were curled up together in his arms. He touched the edge of the bed next to him. Originally, when they set off, he felt a little cool at most, but now his hands were frozen. Looks like we're almost there. He picked up the thermometer on the table. At this time, the air plague had plummeted to about 2 degrees Celsius. Although it was still above zero, it was still very cold. Seeing this, Jiang Hai woke the 3 women up first and asked them to put on their clothes to sleep. Then he went out to wake up Belle, Lester and Connor Sun, as well as little Huang and Xiao Bai in the other room. He also prepared coats for them in advance. Soon after everyone was fully armed, the sky outside also began to brighten.